Welcome back to the second part of the RPS conversation on composing music in these extraordinary times. I'm James Murphy from the Royal Philharmonic Society, and I'm delighted to be joined by the composers Hannah Conway, Daniel Kidane, Roxanna Panufnik, and Sir James MacMillan. In the first part, I mentioned the cliche of a composer writing alone in their garret, but of course I know from each of you that in various ways you've strived in your music for it to involve everyday people or speak to their concerns. And picking up on something that Hannah said earlier on about opportunity, might there be a chance in all of this, the way that suddenly we're seeing inside musicians' houses, inside their bedrooms, inside their living rooms? I'm enjoying looking at all of your decor right now, that we could bring the composer more to the limelight. I mean, I think, as I say, in all of your work, you've done that to some extent, but, should perhaps the people listening at home, seize the moment and find out more about their composers and what's making their composers' hearts beat, perhaps.
Yeah.
There was a question in that, but any comment?
I'm going to say yes. Well, I'm not going to say it's a magical thing, but the thing is that we're all in this together, so to speak. So to go back to the sort of idea that composers are always seeking the new and trying to fix problems musically and non-musically. So it has been a great opportunity to sort of reach out to people directly and really champion new pieces. I think the other the other sort of issue with social distancing is that a lot of the pieces, funnily enough, recently I've been approached with new pieces that have to be written for sort of odd ensemble setups or making sure that it works or is short or has a specific purpose. So I think inadvertently you can't run away from employing or using a composer in that sense, because you can't have a massive Mahler symphony, but you can have a sort of new piece for 10 players that are socially distanced and works without a conductor or something along those lines. So it's the problem-solving aspect. And other for instance, I'm working with a choral group now, and unfortunately they were directly affected. Two of their members passed away because of COVID-19. So they wanted to commission a piece that responded to that loss that they had within their own sort of choral community. So for them, it's a very personal journey. So working with groups on that level is very humbling, and you want to do the right thing, and it just puts a whole different aspect on a sort of a new commission when it has a gravitas like that to it. So it's yeah, I don't know if that answers your question, but it sort of adds to it, perhaps.
Any of you have further thoughts arising from that?
Well, I think it's brought to the fore in my mind just how important a composer's commitment to his community is. There's something about the British composer that has always valued his or her own community, and whatever that community may be. I'm thinking in particular of the composer-led festivals at Aldborough, for example, and then the St Magnus Festival in Orkney, set up by Peter Maxwell Davies and Benjamin Britten, of course, in Aldborough. And the composers in those situations have always wanted to put the local community at the heart of the music making, whether it be writing music for the local school or the local brass band, local choir, local choral society. And that's something that has marked the British musical scene in a very particular way. It's not to say it doesn't happen in other countries, but with those composers and many of us still see that as a very important aspect of what we do. Writing a children's opera, for example, is just as important in my mind as writing a symphony for the great orchestras of the world. And listening to some of Benjamin Britten's children's operas, like Noise Flood, for example, I think that's one of his greatest pieces. And it's obviously he gave everything of himself to a project that might have seemed to other musicians at the time some sort of side alley that was a distraction from his main work. But Britain never saw it that way, and I don't think we should either. We should see out the commitment to the kind of communities that we work with is absolutely central. And I mean, obviously with my little festival, it has had to be cancelled, of course. We've had to postpone things and reshape things, but we are keeping in touch with the various constituent groups in the community through these electronic means, and we want to build that sense of community through music. We imagine that there might be scope to make a series of community operas or shenas or music dramas involving different groups. Some of those groups will be musical, like the local Amdram choir, but some of them won't be musical at all. Mothers and toddlers groups. We've targeted a dementia choir in the area that we're now working with. And if they can actually make their own material, if they can bring something of their own experiences of life to the stage, maybe even to the extent of writing their own text, or in some cases writing their own music, making their own music in conjunction with composers being useful in that sense, then we're beginning to see how the whole range of different levels in the world of composition and in music can actually work together and revivify communal life in a musical way.
Revivify, that's a beautiful word for the moment. It does seem to me that every piece of music ever written to an extent has been a pact between a composer, performers and an audience, and it relies on all of you. It's a group effort to get that thing heard and valued and heard again. But Hannah, almost in your work, you sort of like tilt the scales a little bit, so the requirement of the audience, of the community, you almost make it harder for yourself by surrendering such a big portion of your creativity and handing it over to them. What led you to do that in the first place? Why do you do that, and what's valuable about that?
Yeah, that's really interesting that you use the word surrender, because I don't feel that in any which way. I think it's about the sum of the parts being richer than any one individual. So I don't think about it as me surrendering creativity. Quite the opposite. I feel that right from the start, when I first began this work, working in Palestinian refugee camps back in 1997, which is really one of the core reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing now, rather than follow the path that I was on as a flautist, as a classical flautist. I learned immediately how enriching musically it was to be working alongside people who had absolutely zero musical experience at all. And the way in what those people teach me and continue to teach me, what communities continue to teach me about life and about how music resonates with the human being is so important in everything that I do and make, and the music that I write, and that I hope that then that translates immediately to the listener, because that's a core part of how the seeds are grown. So I think composers have always been knitted within society on a load of different levels. I think what James said about this leveling of people not seeing community work, community opera as being any less important or higher on a different hierarchical scale than a symphony written for the LSO or one of the world's best ensembles. I think there needs to be a leveling of that.
I keep thinking, and it's a sort of limited parallel to an extent, but about the sort of the flowering of art at the end of the Second World War, and how important art and music were in bringing the nation back its spirit. Now, of course, this has been a very different experience for the nation from that, but there may be some parallels to be drawn. And there were great things happen. Of course, we saw Radio 3, well, what was to become Radio 3 really flower. I was reading the other day about the LPO going on a tour of music halls, a 3-month Blitz tour, and it was a real moment to sort of remind the public, what music is here for and what music can play in all of that in all of our lives. Oh, I suppose I wanted to ask each of you what hopes might you therefore have, however ambitious, however fanciful, for this moment and for new music?
I think that we have to be optimistic. I think the next year is going to be hard. It's going to be upside down. It's going to be confusing. It's going to be a challenge. But everything, maybe most things that were planned for this year, will hopefully be rescheduled for the next year. And what I'm hoping is if we just keep working away and keep getting involved with things, that we'll all suddenly have a doubly busy 21-22, and that the world really will blossom and explode creatively. And I think you have to have that in your sight, and just keep reminding yourself, as you know, as bits of bad news like recently St Margaret's Church, the church, the local parish of the Houses of Parliament having to let their professional choir go, things like that. They'll come back. It will come back, and but it'll be back with more inspiration and more creativity and things that we've learned about how to communicate with people in these challenging times.
I think that's absolutely right. It's forcing us to wipe the slate clean, and if not begin again, certainly begin with a renewed sense of purpose. Maybe it gives us all an opportunity, not just us four, but the whole musical world, an opportunity to rethink our raison d'etre. What are we here for? Who are we communicating with? Have we let down our powers of communication before this? Does this give us an opportunity to look closely at who we are as musicians and what our world of music is all about, in order to make it better? And some things will be the same, some things will come back, but some things might not. And into that vacuum might come new things, and indeed new opportunities. And artists are meant to be creative people, and I've certainly also been looking back at the end of the Second World War as an example of great hope. And I've been watching documentaries about Benjamin Britten in the last few days, and seeing how he suddenly came to the fore at that moment in 1945 as the composer of Peter Grimes. And there's this amazing sense of excitement in British cultural life about a new voice, a new power, a new sense of reach, from within a community that had been so battered by the war, but yet was producing work which was now speaking to the whole of the world. And we may indeed see those opportunities arise in many different kind of forms in the next few years.
Daniel, what would your hopes be?
Similar, echoing what's been already said, but I hope that we will have the sort of energy to carry on. I suppose there's also a call out to higher powers, and I hope that those in power sort of realise the importance, as we've all been discussing, the importance of the arts of music, what it can do for our communities, the support network that it provides for people, not only to be involved in music, but to go to concerts, to be inspired, to be enriched, all of those, and that goes through literally every level of society, from young children to people who are of an older age. And I think it's I'd like to stay optimistic and positive, and hope that it will all be there on the other side.
While we're all dearly missing the live experience that is very much at the center of everything that we care about and love, I think lockdown has been and will continue to be, as long as it goes on, a great opportunity for listening, especially given the technology that we have now. I'm certainly trying to listen to as many things that I don't think I really had the time for before, and making some delightful discoveries. What about each of you? Have you had a discovery, musical or perhaps otherwise, in lockdown, that we might share with the audience, and encourage them to go and track down too? And it doesn't have to be the proper Royal Philharmonic Society answer.
A couple of nice things that I've really enjoyed. I really enjoyed Music for 300 Strangers. That was a piece which you'd have to just Google and then have a look. I don't really want to tell you too much about it, but basically it's everybody from people playing their lawnmowers to incredible sax improv solos. I've been really loving watching things like that, different things that people have produced.
Great. Googling it already. Who else?
I've also found that, I've always been interested in world music, and just before lockdown happened, actually, I just subscribed to Songlines magazine, and it's been really fantastic while confined to home to be able to listen to sounds from all over the world, and it's been really exciting. It's brought the world in to my little composing shed here. It's been great.
Anything else?
I've been involved with an organisation called the Stay at Home Choir, which has been working with hundreds of singers around about the world on a number of different projects, bringing them together, giving them online vocal sessions, teaching. The one I was involved in involved the 16, and we had 4 singers from the 16 giving sectional rehearsals and voice classes to hundreds and hundreds of participants, and preparing them to sing, in my case, a little motet of mine, but in other projects involving the likes of the King singers and so on. They've been inviting hundreds from around the globe who are obviously hungry for what they're missing, that they're missing their choirs, they're missing the music making, of course, but they're missing the social interaction, the personal connection between one singer and another, and in a musical way, and in perhaps a psychological and even spiritual way. Projects undertaken by the Stay-at-Home Choir and similar initiatives have been a lifeline for many. And it's amazing what you can do. I mean, you can't actually, as far as I can see, get hundreds of people to sing simultaneously, but they managed to get them to record their own contribution to a particular line, so soprano, alto, tenor, and bass, and then these wonderful producers mix it all together, and a few weeks later it all comes out and it's broadcast, and the effects are stunning. And I see that the videos are achieving a huge reach. Thousands and thousands of viewers from many countries are listening in and watching what we've been up to. So it's not life as we know it as musicians, but it's an exciting alternative, and it's keeping us all in touch with each other.
Indeed, indeed. Daniel, what are your discoveries?
I've been listening to sort of medleys of music, but actually recently I've been brushing up on my composers of African descent, if you want to call it that. So I've been listening to a lot of stuff like Anthony Braxton, George Lewis, Charles Uzo, Ollie Wilson, TJ Anderson, Julius Eastman, Alvin Singleton, etc., etc. So stuff that I'd, perhaps, that back catalogue that I wasn't aware of, I thought I'd go out and it's a good time to be listening. So I've been sitting down and getting the playlists up and doing a bit of active listening and researching. So yeah.
Do share those playlists with us. That'd be great to hear them.
Yeah.
We are really running out of time, sadly. If there was anything any of you wanted to perhaps say to your audience, well, we maybe have just a few of them captive in this moment. Is there anything you would share Any sentiments at this moment?
Carry on listening.
Carry on listening, but also carry on buying, please. Carry on downloading tracks off iTunes, and not just of us composers, but all our fellow performers. Please carry on supporting and be excited for what's going to come out of all of this when it ends.
Yes, I'd like just to say we'll be back, and we are thinking about you all the time. I mean, all the music we are all writing just now is for that audience, and its impact on the audience has been delayed. But we wouldn't be writing this music, we wouldn't be creating this music, which is in our heads and our hearts just now, in silence and in isolation, if it wasn't for the hope that it will be out there one day and communicating and speaking and spreading its meaning to our audiences who we know are still there.
Well, I, for one, am feeling very uplifted by talking to you. My tip to the audience, go and find a composer, talk to a composer. It's a lovely thing indeed. I regret that we're out of time today with so much yet to say, but I hope you at home have drawn some worthwhile insight into the lives, concerns and hopes of composers, and that your ears might be eager to hear more of our featured composers' music online. We've more RPS conversations to come, so I do hope you'll join us again. You might like to go one step further and consider becoming an RPS member and join us as we set out to explore and to celebrate what makes Britain Philharmonic. For now, many thanks and much admiration to our composers today, Roxanna Panufnik, Hannah Conway, Daniel Kidane, and Sir James MacMillan.